They say the Earth is solid. But what if that belief is only a layer, thin as skin over something breathing beneath? For centuries, explorers, mystics, and scientists alike have whispered about vast caverns stretching below the crust, connected by tunnels older than recorded time. From the icy mouths of Antarctica to the deep sinkholes of Tibet, clues emerge like half-remembered dreams, inscriptions of unknown languages, magnetic anomalies that twist compasses, and stories of luminous cities that no one has ever seen, yet everyone somehow knows. Could there be an ancient realm beneath our feet, one untouched by the sun, ruled by a civilization that predates our own? Legends call it Agartha, a hidden empire beneath the Earth's mantle, where forgotten knowledge still glows in crystalline halls and rivers of light replace the seas. Some say its gates open only to those who can see through myth into memory. Others insist it is not a place at all, but a reflection of something buried within us. Perhaps both are true. Perhaps the map lies not in the sky, but underfoot. Welcome to Deformed History. If you're drawn to stories like these, the ones that live in the shadows between what we see and what was made to disappear, feel free to like and subscribe only if it feels right, and let me know in the comments where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now. I love seeing our little map of watchers light up around the world. The story begins not in myth, but in the strange tremor of forgotten records, moments when explorers, scholars, and wanderers found themselves standing before the impossible, beneath the ice shelves of the poles, in the yawning mouths of volcanoes, within the dark lungs of Himalayan caverns, came whispers of a world that defied all surface logic. They called it the Hollow Earth, though that phrase feels too crude, too mechanical, to contain what these accounts tried to describe. It was not emptiness they spoke of, but presence, a vastness alive with design. In the late 19th century, the idea of subterranean realms captivated thinkers across continents. The American author and war veteran John Cleves Sims, Jr. once declared that Earth was composed of concentric spheres, each one habitable, each connected by openings at the poles. To the scientific mind, it was madness. To the poetic mind, a key that fit too perfectly into the locked door of myth. Symes died before anyone proved or disproved him, yet his conviction planted a seed that took root in explorers of a different kind. The dreamers who believed that myth is only truth told in another tongue. Years later, in 1947, another man would fly into the heart of that dream. Admiral Richard E. Byrd, the celebrated polar explorer, reported something during his expedition that would never appear in official logs. His private journal, released decades later, told of an encounter that seemed to shatter the map itself. He wrote of a land beyond the pole that was not barren ice but fertile, bathed in light. The engines of his aircraft faltered, and he claimed to have been drawn downward into a valley glowing with colors unknown to the surface world. He spoke of craft that defied gravity and beings of towering presence who radiated calm rather than threat. When he returned, his story was sealed under military orders, dismissed as delusion, and locked behind the curtain of classified silence. But every silence conceals an echo. Others began to notice the same peculiar magnetic distortions around the poles that Byrd described. Compasses spun without cause, radio frequencies bent as though the air itself were warped. Even the auroras seemed to pulse in patterns too deliberate to be coincidence. What if these were not anomalies at all, but messages, signatures of a hidden order beneath? The legends of Agartha had long preceded any expedition or radar scan. In Buddhist and Hindu texts, Agartha, or sometimes Shambhala, is not merely a location, but a realm of pure knowledge. It is said to be the heart of the earth, not in a physical sense alone, but in the way a seed carries the memory of a tree. Hidden beneath the Himalayas, protected by time and intention, it was believed to be home to beings who guide the surface world through unseen means. The lamas of Tibet spoke of tunnels that could take a prepared traveler from one end of the world to the other, following the luminous arteries of Agartha's network. And while modern scholars call these metaphors, one cannot ignore how often metaphors later prove to be blueprints misunderstood by those who read them too literally. In the early 20th century, European mystics, especially within circles like the Theosophical Society, revived these ideas with new urgency. They spoke of Agartha as the refuge of the ancient masters, survivors of lost continents like Atlantis and Lemuria, who had retreated underground to preserve their wisdom. Some even claimed that the Shambhala prophecies encoded astronomical cycles, warning of ages when humanity would lose its way on the surface. During those dark epochs, the hidden ones would stir again, sending forth knowledge through chosen emissaries, artists, and scientists, who would unknowingly shape the future according to patterns older than civilization itself. Strange coincidences began to form between these esoteric accounts and physical discoveries. In 1960, seismic readings in the Pacific revealed vast hollow cavities stretching beneath the oceanic crust, spaces large enough to contain entire mountain ranges. The data was quietly reinterpreted as magma chambers, yet the symmetry of some readings suggested something more structured, almost architectural. Deep drilling projects in the Soviet Union later reached depths where the rock itself emitted a low-frequency hum, a resonance that instruments could detect but not explain. When asked, local miners said they sometimes heard voices beneath the drills, as if the earth were speaking through the pressure of stone. And then there were the ancient maps. One of the most perplexing was the Piri Reis map of 1513, an Ottoman chart that depicted the coastlines of Antarctica centuries before it was officially discovered. More curious still, the map showed the continent free of ice, matching what modern radar surveys would reveal of its subglacial terrain. How could a mapmaker in the 16th century have known the geography of a land buried under 2 miles of frozen time? Some researchers suggested that the information came from older sources, fragments of pre-Diluvian cartography passed down through secret traditions. If so, perhaps the knowledge originated from beneath, not above. The deeper one looks, the more the question changes shape. It is no longer simply whether there is a civilization inside Earth, but whether civilization itself might have emerged from below. Myths across cultures speak of ancestors rising from subterranean worlds. The Hopi of North America tell of emerging from the Third World through a sipapu in the ground. The Maya describe a cavernous underworld called Xibalba, a place of trial and transformation. The ancient Greeks spoke of Hades, not as a realm of punishment, but as the shadowed mirror of life, where souls remember what they once were. Everywhere, the motif repeats: descent before awakening. Perhaps the idea of Agartha was never meant to be taken as geography alone. Perhaps it is both literal and symbolic, a mirror of our own descent into the unknown parts of being. Every civilization buries its past under layers of convenience, conquest, and forgetting. What we call progress may simply be another form of burial. To reach Agartha might mean to remember, to descend through the strata of illusion until we stand once more in the original light that burns beneath the crust of history. And yet, there are those who insist that the entrances are real. They point to Mount Kailash in Tibet, to the Mato Grosso jungles of Brazil, to the icy mouths of the poles, to the mysterious boreholes of Siberia where heat radiates upward like breath. They say governments guard these sites under the guise of scientific expeditions, that certain satellite images are deliberately blurred, and that our maps are edited not just for political borders, but for dimensional ones. What if those who went missing in pursuit of these gates were not lost, but found? What if they crossed into the forgotten empire and never returned because there was no longer a reason to? If such a world exists, perhaps it watches us even now, not with malice, but with the patient curiosity of an elder species waiting for its children to remember where they came from. The surface trembles, and the silence below feels almost sentient. Somewhere between myth and measurement, between dream and depth, the story of Agartha breathes again, waiting for those willing to listen beneath the noise. Every legend that endures does so because it hides something more than a story. It hides a memory. Agartha, as spoken of in hushed tones among mystics, explorers, and scholars alike, continues to echo not because it was ever proven, but because it has never been disproven. It remains like a pressure deep within the human imagination, pulsing beneath centuries of rational thought. In the quiet corridors of old libraries and monasteries, the same question repeats. Why does every culture remember a world beneath this one? The recurrence of that memory, so persistent, so uninvited, suggests it was once real enough to leave a scar on the collective soul. Archaeological anomalies have always carried this whisper. In 1945, when a group of spelunkers in Cappadocia stumbled upon the ancient underground city of Derinkuyu, they found a labyrinth capable of housing more than 20,000 people, complete with ventilation shafts, wells, and sealed stone doors that could be rolled shut from the inside. Some sections stretched 8 levels below the surface. The mainstream explanation was simple. Early Christians built it to hide from persecution. But there were problems. Its construction predates the Christian era by thousands of years, and no known tools of that time could have carved so smoothly through volcanic rock. The city seemed less a refuge and more a residue, as if it had been repurposed by later civilizations who merely inherited what they could not fully comprehend. Across the globe, similar sites appear. Subterranean networks under Malta, tunnels beneath the pyramids of Giza, the mysterious long caves of Ecuador filled with polished walls that reflect light unnaturally. In South America, local Quechua tribes still tell of the Tayos caves, where explorers claim to have seen metallic libraries engraved with strange symbols. The names of the visitors differ: Juan Morich, Neil Armstrong, but the accounts converge on the same impossible geometry, suggesting the work of something not quite human, or at least not of our current epoch. If Agartha is myth, it is a myth that bleeds through stone. Ancient writings hint at corridors that crisscross the planet, linking sacred mountains and temples like nodes of a forgotten nervous system. In Hindu cosmology, these pathways are called Patala Loka, regions beneath the earth inhabited by serpent-like beings known as Nagas, described not as demons, but as guardians of knowledge and keepers of immense technology. When Western scholars read such texts, they often reduce them to metaphor, missing the way myth encodes what language cannot rationally contain. To the ancient mind, to say serpent was to speak of intelligence that coils through matter, something older than human thought itself. In the 19th century, the French occultist Saint-Yves d'Alvedre claimed he had received telepathic contact from the Mahatmas of Agartha, enlightened rulers of a subterranean kingdom governed by perfect harmony. He described their capital as a luminous city of halls carved from living crystal, where sound itself carried energy potent enough to move objects. His account was dismissed as fantasy, yet decades later, physicists began to discover that sound waves could indeed generate standing patterns capable of levitating matter, a phenomenon now known as acoustic levitation. Perhaps Saint-Yves was not inventing, perhaps he was remembering. The 20th century saw science step inadvertently closer to myth. As geophysicists mapped the planet's internal layers, they detected vast anomalies, zones that did not conform to expected density models. In 2015, researchers from the University of Alberta reported seismic data suggesting an enormous pocket of water trapped 400 miles beneath the surface, enough to fill every ocean 3 times over. Others identified low-velocity regions within the mantle where waves slow inexplicably, as if striking hollow space or a different medium altogether. Officially, these are subduction zones, or thermal plumes. But among those who still listen for echoes of Agartha, these pockets are seen as entrances or perhaps chambers of something much more deliberate. One might ask, if such an empire existed, why remain hidden? The simplest answer is survival. Throughout myth, the underworld is not a place of exile, but of preservation. The gods retreat underground after cataclysms. Heroes descend to recover what was lost. The pattern repeats in every culture. When the surface collapses into chaos, knowledge sinks to where it can endure. What we call Agartha might therefore be the living archive of all epochs humanity has forgotten. There is another possibility, more unsettling. What if the hidden civilization is not physically beneath us, but dimensionally adjacent, sharing the same coordinates, yet vibrating at a different frequency? Ancient Tibetan texts describe the rainbow body, a transformation achieved through spiritual mastery, where the physical dissolves into light without leaving a corpse. If such transmutation is possible for the individual, could it not also apply to entire civilizations? Perhaps Agartha slipped beneath perception itself, existing in a spectrum we cannot see. Still, stories persist of physical gateways. In 1970, a Soviet geological team in Siberia recorded a drilling anomaly at 12 kilometers deep. Their instruments captured what sounded like distant mechanical resonance, followed by frequencies resembling voices. The tapes were quickly sealed, and the project was abandoned. Newspapers later sensationalized it as the well to hell, though what the data actually contained remains classified. Meanwhile, magnetic readings near the Arctic continue to defy explanation. Satellite images reveal circular depressions, smoothed as if by design, then scrubbed from later maps. We have always underestimated the Earth's memory. Every fault line, every tremor, might be the planet's own pulse, a reminder that what lies beneath is not inert, but aware. To the mystics of old, The Earth was never dead matter. It was a conscious being, breathing through mountains and oceans alike. Agartha, in this view, is its heart, and humanity is but the surface dream of that deeper mind. Some esoteric traditions claim that portals to the inner world can be found only when the traveler carries the right vibration, an alignment of thought, emotion, and intent. Such teachings may sound mystical, yet quantum physics has begun to echo the same principles. Observation changes reality. Frequency determines visibility. Perhaps the gates of Agartha do not open to machines or drills, but to resonance. In that case, Admiral Byrd's descent was not merely geographical, it was psychological. He entered a state that mirrored the frequency of the realm below. His aircraft was simply the vessel for a much older journey, the descent into hidden consciousness. If this sounds like fantasy, consider how many discoveries began the same way. The round Earth, the invisible atom, the relativity of time. Every truth begins as heresy, and perhaps one day the idea of civilizations beneath will seem as natural as galaxies above. The thought lingers like an aftertaste. Maybe we are the underground ones, sealed within a thin crust of perception, mistaking the surface for the whole. The ancients may have understood this inversion better than we do. To them, the descent was never about digging deeper, it was about waking up. And when we dream of falling endlessly through darkness, perhaps it is not fear that pulls us down, but invitation. The void we dread may be the very doorway back to what remembers us. Somewhere under our feet, or within our forgotten frequency, the empire waits, its lights humming in patient rhythm, like the heartbeat of a truth too vast for daylight. There is a peculiar silence that surrounds every attempt to verify Agartha, as if the Earth itself resists exposure. Scientists call it coincidence, seekers call it interference. Expeditions vanish without trace, documents are lost in sudden fires, photographs blur at the edges where light bends in ways our lenses cannot replicate. Yet the pattern is too consistent to dismiss. What hides beneath us is not simply a question of geology, it is a question of permission. The deeper we look, the more it feels as though something down there is choosing what we are allowed to see. In 1924, the Norwegian sailor Olaf Jansen claimed that he and his father had accidentally sailed through an opening at the North Pole into a temperate inner world illuminated by a central sun. His story, later published as The Smoky God, was ridiculed by scientists and spiritualists alike. Yet fragments of his description find echoes in polar reports even today. The auroras that flicker from below rather than above, the mysterious warmth recorded in Arctic currents, the migration of birds that disappear northward each winter and return from nowhere each spring. To some, these are coincidences of nature. To others, they are the footprints of a reality only the brave or the forgotten have touched. The strange warmth near the poles has long defied explanation. Satellite scans reveal unexpected temperature gradients beneath the ice, as if heat were seeping upward from within. NASA attributes it to geothermal anomalies, yet the distribution of these hotspots forms patterns too symmetrical to be random. Spirals and rings visible only when mapped across decades. Some researchers, working quietly, have suggested they correspond to magnetic portals, temporary windows in the geomagnetic field that allow energy, and perhaps matter, to flow between surface and core. If that is true, then our planet may not be sealed at all, but breathing through invisible lungs. The Tibetan monks speak of this phenomenon differently. They call it the earth's breath, and they say that those who learn to attune their heartbeat to it can hear the hidden hum that connects all life. That hum, they say, emanates from Agartha, the great heart of the world, pulsing in perfect balance with the cosmic rhythm above. This is why, they insist, great civilizations rise and fall in cycles. When humanity drifts out of resonance, disaster follows. Floods, fires, and wars are merely surface symptoms of that inner dissonance. The earth corrects itself through collapse, just as a body purges fever. And when the fever passes, the hidden world opens its gates once more, offering fragments of forgotten wisdom to those who remain. Across centuries, those fragments have surfaced like messages in a bottle. In the archives of Alexandria, before its destruction, there were said to be scrolls describing chambers of eternal flame beneath the western sea. The Aztecs carved depictions of stairways descending beneath mountains into the realm of the sun within the earth. The Dogon tribe of Mali spoke of the inner light of Nomo, a subterranean intelligence that taught them about invisible stars, only confirmed by astronomers thousands of years later. None of these civilizations had contact with each other, yet their metaphors converge on the same architecture, a radiant core concealed within the dark. In modern times, fragments continue to surface in stranger forms. During the 1970s, satellite readings over the Himalayas captured faint geometric alignments beneath layers of rock, perfect circles spanning miles, aligned with ancient monasteries known to guard the Shambhala teachings. When the data reached academic channels, it was dismissed as sensor error. But one of the technicians involved later reported something unusual. When the satellite passed directly above Mount Kailash, the sacred mountain believed to be a physical marker of Agartha, the signal vanished completely, as if swallowed by an invisible field. For 30 seconds, the instruments recorded nothing, and when the data resumed, it carried residual noise that no one could identify. The technician described it as a harmonic vibration, like an organ note sustained across vacuum. Skeptics call these accounts convenient mysteries. Yet the skeptic's greatest weakness is the assumption that mystery exists only where data is missing. What if mystery is itself a form of data, one we simply lack the tools to read? Each anomaly, each lost file, each vanishing expedition may not be proof of absence, but the deliberate curvature of truth, guiding attention away from what must remain untouched. The earth is not obliged to reveal its heart to those who dig only for conquest. Throughout esoteric lore, the entrance to Agartha is said to open not through force, but through harmony. In that sense, perhaps the technology of its people is not mechanical, but harmonic. Sound, light, and geometry woven into matter at its fundamental frequency. Ancient stone chambers across the world exhibit similar acoustic properties. The hypogeum of Malta amplifies frequencies at exactly 110 Hz, the same vibration that induces trance-like states in the human brain. The Great Pyramid of Giza channels resonance through granite corridors tuned to the Earth's own Schumann frequency. Even the stone circles of Britain hum with magnetic anomalies that alter compass readings. Could these sites be remnants of an older global network, each resonating like an antenna for communication between surface and below? If Agartha still thrives, its civilization would not rely on metals and wires as we do. Its architecture might be crystalline, alive, self-healing, responsive to vibration. Its energy source could be the planet's core itself, harnessed not through extraction, but through symbiosis. Imagine cities grown rather than built, light flowing through stone like blood through veins, language replaced by telepathic resonance. This is not fiction. It is the logical extension of what nature already demonstrates on a smaller scale. Crystals store information, sound shapes matter, and energy seeks balance. A civilization advanced enough to live within the planet would not conquer nature. It would become indistinguishable from it. And yet, traces of its influence may still reach us. Inventors throughout history have described receiving designs in dreams. Nikola Tesla once claimed his wireless energy concepts came from a distant intelligence. The mathematician Srinivasa Ramanujan said his equations were revealed to him by a goddess of knowledge. We celebrate such minds as anomalies, but perhaps they were receivers, momentary bridges between the surface and the luminous depths. Still, for every whisper of wonder, there is the shadow of control. Governments fund polar expeditions but release little data. Religious institutions canonize heaven above while condemning the notion of paradise below. Our entire cosmology is built on the assumption that light belongs to the sky. To admit otherwise would invert everything: faith, power, and the very direction of human aspiration. For if enlightenment lies beneath, then those who claim dominion above would lose their throne. Maybe that is why Agartha must remain hidden, not out of malice but mercy. To reveal itself fully would shatter the scaffolding of our world before we are ready to rebuild it. And so it waits, watching the slow evolution of our understanding, offering glimpses in myth, tremors in data, a hum beneath the noise. The question, then, is not whether Agartha exists. It is whether we can become quiet enough to hear it, because silence is not emptiness. It is invitation. Beneath the crust of thought and the machinery of proof, the world listens back. Somewhere in that resonance, the hidden empire continues its patient song, an ancient lullaby for a species that has forgotten how to dream. Every civilization, at some point, becomes haunted by what it has buried. The ruins beneath our feet are not only made of stone, they are made of memory, of truths that refuse to stay dead. The deeper we dig, the more the soil feels sentient, as if the earth itself guards its secrets with deliberate patience. Those who have studied the patterns know that the legends of Agartha are not random tales scattered across cultures, but fragments of a single coded memory, one that stretches from the temples of Egypt to the snowfields of Tibet, from the caves of Cappadocia to the jungles of the Amazon. Something connects them, an invisible thread weaving through myth, symbol, and sound, suggesting that the story of an inner world is not imagination, but remembrance. Some clues are so subtle they seem almost poetic until science stumbles upon them centuries later. In 1994, geologists discovered a vast anomaly beneath South America, an enormous structure reflecting seismic waves as though it were metal. Its scale defied comprehension, extending hundreds of miles across, too symmetrical to be a natural formation. The discovery was quietly labeled a subcrustal density anomaly, but in the fringe circles of research, whispers emerged. What if this was part of the inner network described in ancient Vedic texts? The Sanskrit word Agartha itself derives from Agartha, meaning the unassailable, or the fortress within. A structure designed not for defense, but preservation. That idea, preservation, appears again and again. The Nag Hammadi codices buried in Egyptian sands, the Dead Sea Scrolls hidden in desert caves, the Sumerian tablets sealed under ash. Humanity, it seems, has always hidden its wisdom underground when the surface grows hostile. Could it be that the planet itself follows the same instinct? That after each cataclysm, the flood of Atlantis, the younger Dryas fires, the shifting poles, the Earth buries her knowledge deeper, waiting for a generation patient enough to listen instead of exploit? There are those who believe Agartha is not merely beneath us, but within a separate layer of time, a pocket of stability preserved when the rest of the world resets. According to certain tantric cosmologies, the Earth's interior is not solid but fluid with energy, like the bloodstream of a living being. Time moves differently there. What is a century to us might be a moment below. It would explain the legends of immortals, the ascended masters or lords of the flame, who appear throughout history to nudge civilization forward before vanishing again. Their sudden knowledge, their mysterious origin, their refusal to age, it all fits a pattern too consistent to ignore. One of the most striking accounts comes from a Buddhist Lama in the early 20th century, who claimed that beneath the city of Lhasa there lay tunnels leading to the great heart of the world. He described traveling through illuminated corridors where the walls themselves emitted light without flame or electricity. There, he said, lived the king of the world, a symbolic figure representing wisdom itself, a being who communicates telepathically with chosen adepts across the surface. When asked how such a thing could exist unseen by modern eyes, the Lama simply smiled. You cannot see what vibrates faster than your vision. In 1989, Soviet engineers conducting deep seismic imaging in Central Asia picked up anomalies that matched no known geological strata. At a depth where molten rock should have been, they recorded reflections consistent with caverns, vast hollow zones stretching like veins beneath the Pamir Mountains. The data was shelved and never publicly discussed, but copies leaked years later to private researchers, one of whom noticed an eerie correlation. The coordinates matched the location described in Tibetan texts as the Gate of the Serpent. Coincidence, perhaps, or the quiet re-emergence of an ancient map. We tend to forget that myth often carries the precision of memory disguised as metaphor. The ancient Greeks spoke of Tartarus not simply as a place of punishment, but as the deep recess beneath creation itself, a place where knowledge was hidden to protect it from corruption. The Mayans built temples atop caverns they called Xibalba, entrances to a shadow realm where ancestors dwell. The Hopi people of Arizona still tell of emerging from the inner world after the last great flood, guided by the ant people, benevolent beings who sheltered them underground while fire consumed the surface. These stories, scattered across geography and time, share a geometry too deliberate to dismiss. To understand Agartha, one must also understand sound. The ancients spoke of the music of the spheres, a cosmic harmony connecting matter and consciousness. In 2022, NASA recorded acoustic waves from the Sun and discovered that its vibrations resonate in mathematical ratios identical to the frequencies found in sacred architecture across the world. The same harmonic signatures appear in Tibetan temples, Gothic cathedrals, and the Great Pyramid. Such resonance cannot be coincidence. It suggests a forgotten science, one where architecture was used to tune consciousness itself. If Agartha exists, it might be built upon this principle, a civilization sustained by vibrational symmetry rather than technology as we know it. Imagine an empire sustained by the resonance of planetary frequency, cities powered not by combustion, but by coherence, structures that heal rather than decay, air purified through tone, light generated by thought, gravity itself neutralized through harmonic alignment. These are not impossibilities. They are glimpses of what modern physics now calls phononic metamaterials and resonant levitation. Our science is only now beginning to rediscover what the ancients may have lived within. But every truth has its gatekeepers. The more attention the idea of inner Earth receives, the faster its traces vanish. Caves sealed under geological hazard zones, expeditions mysteriously defunded, archives quietly removed from digital databases. Even Admiral Byrd's alleged journal, long dismissed as apocryphal, resurfaced with missing pages. Sections where he described not only the glowing landscape, but also voices that entered my mind in language beyond words. Those passages were erased in later copies. Someone, somewhere, decided humanity was not yet ready to hear what he heard. And perhaps they were right. To confront the reality of Agartha would mean confronting the possibility that our history is incomplete by design, that civilizations older and wiser than ours chose silence over interference. It would mean admitting that progress is not ascent, but remembrance. Sometimes, in moments of stillness, the planet seems to whisper, a low vibration rising through stone, through soil, through bone, until it meets the rhythm of the human heart. It is the same pulse heard in the caverns of Malta, in the temple drums of Angkor, in the chants echoing through Himalayan valleys. A heartbeat too vast to belong to any one creature. The ancients said it was the song of the inner world, a song that never stopped, only fell below our hearing. Perhaps Agartha has never been lost. Perhaps we are the ones drifting farther from its frequency, mistaking silence for absence. What we call myth may simply be memory sung in a key we've forgotten. And the earth, patient as always, continues to hum beneath us, waiting for the day when our listening becomes clear enough to join the song once more. There are moments when myth begins to fold back into the world, when the symbolic suddenly feels literal, as though an invisible curtain has been drawn aside. The story of Agartha lives in that threshold, half revelation, half reflection, whispering that what lies below is not foreign, but forgotten. Each generation inherits the same paradox. We build monuments to remember, yet the deeper meaning of what we remember always slips beneath language. Maybe that is why the idea of a hidden empire persists. It speaks to a truth that cannot die because it lives within the architecture of the earth itself, and perhaps within us. Modern technology, for all its precision, keeps circling the same mystery. The European Space Agency's seismic tomography maps now reveal two vast structures resting above the planet's core, each larger than the Moon, each composed of material unlike the surrounding mantle. Geologists call them thermochemical piles, but the symmetry of their placement, directly beneath Africa and the Pacific, suggests intention rather than accident. Ancient legends describe these regions as the roots of the world, gateways to the inner kingdom. Even now, magnetic anomalies ripple outward from them, distorting compasses and radio signals. The Earth's pulse, measurable and real, mirrors the myth it was meant to silence. Perhaps myth and science are not opposites, but reflections, two mirrors facing each other, extending into infinity. Every myth, no matter how ornate, begins with a real event, just as every scientific truth begins with an imaginative leap. Between them lies the forgotten language that once united both, the language of pattern. And the pattern of Agartha runs everywhere, through stone alignments, through mythic genealogies, through the very geometry of consciousness. Across disciplines, fragments of that pattern are resurfacing. Quantum physicists now speak of holographic reality, where every part of the universe contains the whole. Geobiologists describe the Earth's crust as a living network of conductivity, a neural field where energy flows like thought. When mystics of the past said the Earth had a mind, they may not have been metaphorical. We are only beginning to detect the planetary synapses they sensed in silence. In that context, Agartha could be less a place and more a state, a coherent node of consciousness within the planetary field, existing in perfect resonance with itself. Yet human instinct still demands shape, color, structure, a city of light, towers of crystal, rivers that glow like veins of aurora. So the stories paint it in visible terms. They describe the capital of Agartha, sometimes called Shambhala, as a circle of radiant halls surrounded by gardens where time itself moves slower. There, sound is architecture, and thought has form. The inhabitants are said to walk not on ground, but through vibration, their bodies more luminous than physical. They do not worship gods, they cultivate harmony. To them, morality is not law, but resonance, the alignment of one's inner tone with the frequency of life. If such beings exist, they are not separate from us. They are what humanity becomes when it remembers how to listen. There is an eerie logic in that vision. Every human culture holds the dream of return, to Eden, to Avalon, to the Golden Age. Even modern psychology echoes it, describing the subconscious as an underworld where forgotten memories shape behavior. Jung called it the collective unconscious. Shamans called it the lower world. Perhaps these are linguistic disguises for the same insight. Beneath the surface lies a realm both literal and symbolic, inhabited by forces that shape the world above. The descent into Agartha may therefore be the descent into ourselves, the journey through shadow toward integration. Throughout history, seekers who pursued the literal entrance often vanished, but those who turned inward reported the same geography: vast caverns of silence, rivers of light, guardians who spoke in frequencies rather than words. Mystics across continents described it in parallel metaphors: the dark night of the soul, the underworld journey, the cave of initiation. What if these were not mere psychological stages, but overlapping coordinates on the same map? Each traveler reaching the threshold through different doors: meditation, dream, science, despair. And yet, something strange is happening now. As the planet warms and the ice recedes, new voids are opening. Massive sinkholes, caverns revealed after millennia of silence. In Greenland, LiDAR scans have uncovered subterranean chambers larger than cathedrals. In Antarctica, radar waves bounce off vast hollows beneath the ice sheet, echoing like empty lungs. Scientists record the data, publish their models, and move on. But the pattern grows clearer. The Earth seems to be exhaling. The buried breath is returning to air. We live in an age where light reaches everywhere except inward. Our satellites photograph the surface of Mars in color, yet we still know less about what lies beneath our own feet. Perhaps that imbalance is not accidental. Maybe we have been kept from the inner world because the outer one is still learning humility. To explore below requires surrender, something our age, obsessed with domination, rarely practices. To enter Agartha, the old texts say, one must carry no weapons, no greed, no fear, only stillness, only a heart capable of resonance. It is tempting to dismiss these teachings as allegory. But allegory, when repeated across millennia and geography, becomes something else, an instruction. We may not yet possess the instruments to detect Agartha, but we already carry the receiver, the human spirit attuned to wonder. Perhaps that is why so many people, when standing in caves or deep mountains, report an inexplicable calm, a sense of returning home. The body remembers frequencies the mind has forgotten. If Agartha exists, it has never been lost. It has only withdrawn. Its silence is its protection, its invisibility, its compassion. The world above continues to fracture. Nations rise and fall, oceans shift, faith collapses and reforms. But below, the same vibration endures, steady as the pulse of the earth. Maybe, when we dream of descending, it is not escapism, but instinct, the same instinct that drives roots toward water and memory toward truth. And so, the story returns to where it began. The faint tremor underfoot, the hum that threads through stone, the intuition that we are walking atop something awake. Whether one calls it Agartha, Shambhala, or the heart of the world, it is the same mystery, an empire hidden not by walls, but by frequency. To reach it may not mean digging through miles of rock, but dissolving the illusion that the surface is all there is. If there is a doorway, it might be made not of matter, but of stillness, not opened by force, but by recognition. And maybe, just maybe, the moment humanity grows quiet enough, the earth will breathe again through us, the hum will rise, the cities of light will stir beneath the mantle, waiting not to be found, but remembered. Because Agartha, in the end, is not a place we discover. It is a truth that rediscovers us, one tremor, one heartbeat, one dream at a time.